One of the things that computers are best at is working with variables, and we talked a little about how to define them last time, and the main thing I emphasized, which I want to reiterate, is this asymmetry. So if I type something like 3 equals c into Matlab and evaluate it by hitting enter, then I get this error message. Error, the expression to the left of the equal sign is not a valid target for an assignment. So the fact that it says left here, that's reminding me about this asymmetry. The variable name goes on the left, the value goes on the right. So if I type c equals 3, that works fine. And then Matlab tells me that c has now been defined. It's written over here in the workspace, and it has value 3. Sometimes we'll have lots of variables defined, like maybe I have a equals pi minus 2. Maybe I have a2 equals 1000. And now I can see that these 3 variables are defined on the left side. And if I ever want to delete just one of these, so forget it from the memory, then I can type something like clear space c. And you'll notice that the c variable has now disappeared from the workspace. If I want to delete all variables, I can type in clear with nothing after it and hit return, and then they all go away. And something that's useful, so let me get some of these back by hitting the up arrow. Okay, I'll go back to a2 equals 1000, I'll go back to a equals pi minus 2. A command which is useful is the who command, and that'll show me what is defined currently inside of Matlab. And so if I type who, I get that it's these 2 variables, a and a2. If I type who with an s at the end, then I get a little more information. I get the data type, I get how much size it's taking up, and because Matlab really cares about matrices, okay, originally the name stands for Matrix Laboratory. That's what Matlab originally stood for. It's telling me what kind of matrix would this be if we're a matrix, and this is saying it's a 1-by-1 matrix. So what I want to talk about now are different ways to start working towards defining matrices inside of Matlab. So first I'm going to define row vectors, and then I'm going to define matrices, which are also called arrays. So easiest way, the way by hand to define a vector, let me call my vector v, is to write v, and then use a square bracket, and then I can write 1, 2, 5, 10. So what have I done here? I've made a vector. Its total length is 4, and it has components 1, 2, 5, and 10 in it. If you ever want to know what's the length of a vector, you can type in length, and this tells me it's length 4. If you ever want to know what's the size of a matrix, okay, you can think of a vector as just a special type of matrix. A row vector is a matrix with just one row. Column vector is a matrix with just one column. So if you ever want to know what's the size of either a number or a vector or a matrix, you can type in size, and the convention is that the first number tells me how many rows are there. Okay, there's just this one row. And the second number tells me how many columns are there. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 different columns. So I defined v up here by using square brackets to enclose the vector and then separating the entries with commas. Another way we can do it, which I won't do too often when I'm making these videos, but on my own I do it this way a lot. I could type w equals 1 space 2 space 7. Okay, so space works the exact same way as a comma. I don't think it's as easy to read, so I won't write it this way in general, but it's good to know that that's a sometimes quicker way to abbreviate making a vector. And I find myself using this method more often than I expected to when I first learned about it. So that's how to make a vector. If I do length of w, I get that it's length 3. And if I try to add those 2 vectors, v plus w, I'm going to get an error because they're different sizes. Okay, you can't add 2 vectors or 2 matrices of different sizes. So what about matrices, which are also called arrays in Matlab? How do we make those by hand? Let me use capital A for array. Okay, and it's going to start out the exact same way, 1, 2, 7. And then if I want to switch to another row, so this isn't going to have just one row, it's going to have more than one row, I'm going to separate the rows with a semicolon. And now I can have something like 3, 5, 10. So there's a 2 by 3 matrix. If I type in size of A, I get that it's 2 by 3. So one more thing about variables that I'd like us to get used to, and it's something that in the Math 13 world would look very strange. It's this syntax that looks like, how about A equals A plus 1? And this syntax, it only makes sense because of the asymmetry of the equal sign. So it's saying A, this variable name, I want that to have the value A plus 1. So let me just remind us what A was. A was 1.14 dot dot dot. And if I do A equals A plus 1, so how you should think about this is it's saying increase A by 1. It's not obvious that this works, but if I do V equals V plus 1, Matlab is fine with that. That says increase every entry of V by 1. And it works the exact same way with arrays. A starts out as this. If I do A equals, how about instead of plus, let's do times. A equals A times 10. So now I get all the entries in A got multiplied by 10.